hello, welcome. Happy May, Do you know what May is? I mean, could be the beginning of spring, could be the end of school, could also be Arthritis Awareness Month. Who would have guessed? Not me, which is funny. I feel like I should have known that way sooner than I learned it, but you learn something new every day. So welcome to May, happy Arthritis Awareness Month. And I figured that there is no better time for me to kind of share some of my experiences with JRA starting in the month of May, because this is apparently it's our month, If you have arthritis, welcome, happy Arthritis Awareness Month. We've been waiting, I guess, for this moment in the sun. But anyway, like I said, I feel like there's no better time to kind of start sharing my experiences with JRA and some of the stories that I feel like should be spoken about more. Just because I think it's important to share your truth and to share the things that have challenged you in your life, because that builds community. And I think a lot of people struggle to find community with the things that they struggle with. And I feel like when there isn't a community that's apparent to you whenever you're struggling with something, it makes it that much harder, and it makes you feel that much more alone and that much more like you are an oddity, when, we all are our own person and we all are unique in a certain way, but like, you shouldn't have to struggle through something alone, because there are so many people going through similar things. So I just feel like I need to do my due diligence in sharing the experience that I've had with JRA over the past 4 years. And like I said, no better time than May, Arthritis Awareness Month. So let's get into it. Today I want to share my diagnosis story with you guys. It was a very long process, that's how I feel like it is for everyone who gets diagnosed with JRA, because it is pretty rare. So I do want to share my diagnosis story, and then also too, I'll follow this video with a few other ideas that I have, but without further ado, let's just jump into it, okay? So currently, I just finished my first year in college, but to start the story, we have to flash back 4 years to the beginning of my first year in high school, right? So this is a long time ago, This is a long time ago. This is 4 years ago. More closer to 5 years ago at this point. So the fall of 2013, I really only had two major things in my life that I was focusing on: my academics and my soccer career. Say it with me, soccer career, okay? I really wanted to be on the soccer team at my high school. But I realized that too late, and I was a little bit undedicated before I realized that. So in the fall, I decided, I was like, Maria, you're going to take this year, you're going to train intramurally very, confidently and with a lot of, gumption. And then you are going to come back next year as a sophomore, and you are going to be on that soccer team, and it's going to be the greatest thing that's ever happened to you, Maria, because you worked for it. So that was the first thing I was focused on. And the second thing, obviously, academics, because my ass wanted to go to college. So those are the two biggest things that I was dealing with in the beginning of my first year in high school. As it should be, I think, for every student. You gotta have something to focus on, something to push you through. So I, like I said, really dedicated to school, would wake up, do the thing, take some notes, come home, do some homework, go to soccer practice, do it again the next day. So that fall, I had random bouts of swelling, but I didn't think anything of it because I was very athletic. Soccer 5 days a week, gym 2 days a week, life the rest of the days, and I was just very, very athletic. So whenever I'd wake up and have a relatively swollen ankle, I wasn't really concerned, because again, I was playing sports, I was very athletic. And yeah, so I started being symptomatic of arthritis in the fall of 2013, but again, didn't think anything of it, just because that's life. And so I remember one morning I went to get ready for school, and I could not walk. Like, physically I couldn't walk because I couldn't put weight on my ankles or my feet. So like, therefore there's no walking for you, you know? So I was still very, very determined to go to school that day because, again, gotta get the grades, gotta make it to soccer practice, gotta do the day, you know? So I remember I rolled myself to the bathroom, literally physically rolled myself to the bathroom, like on the ground, and like hoisted myself up onto the toilet, you know, did whatever I had to do. You know, if you're a hydrated person, you know what's up. And then I texted my mom and I was like, I can't walk. And so she comes like running into my bathroom. She's like, what do you mean you can't walk? And I'm like, I really can't walk. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And so she like looks at my feet and my ankles. She's like, yeah, they're swollen. I don't know what's wrong, but we'll go to the doctor. So that day I didn't go to school, and because I couldn't walk. I wanted to go to school actually really badly because I wanted, you know, to go take notes, learn, interact a little bit, you know, have my day. But I couldn't. So I remember I was overall frustrated because I wanted to go to school and I couldn't. So yeah, that was like the first day that I had like major symptoms that kept me from doing what I needed to do at that point in my life. So we go to the doctors probably around like 11:30, 12. So my swelling had time to go away and make me look like a fool at the doctor's office going in with no issues. So my doctor's like, why are you here today? Like, what's wrong? And I was like, well, like, I couldn't walk this morning. My feet and my ankles were super swollen. And she's like, oh, were they? And so she does an exam and she's like, well, you look fine. And I was like, well, I mean, it's very true that I look fine right now, but like, I really was not earlier. And she's like, are you sure? And I was like, I'm pretty sure. And she's like, are you sure that you didn't have like a quiz or an exam or something in school today that you just felt like you couldn't go to school? And I was just like, no, actually, I really just couldn't walk. So she's like, okay. And I was like, And she was like, well, are you athletic? And I was like, yeah, I play soccer, gym, you know, the whole 9 yards. And she was like, well, you probably overused your ankles and feet, which sounds so ridiculous when you think about the fact that, whatever. She was like, well, you probably overused everything. And she was like, that's why you were probably super swollen this morning. And so you need to know how to ice. Do you know how to ice? And I was like, yeah, I play sports. I know how to ice. And so she was like, well, let me just teach you again. So she taught me how to ice, and then we went on our way. And I remember I got in the car with my mom, and my mom was like, did you have a quiz or a test in school today that you like wanted to miss? And I was like, no, actually, I really couldn't walk. And she was like, all right, I believe you. I just like double checking. And I was like, well, thanks. And so then for the rest of the week, I go back to school like nobody's business, like it never happened. It's all good. So then around 2 weeks later, I wake up again and can't walk. But not only can I not walk, but my hands are swollen also. So this was like a little bit more questionable, and I was just more confused, but I wasn't really concerned. So again, it's like 6:30, I'm trying to get ready for school, except I'm not, and I text my mom, and I'm like, my hands are swollen, and so she comes running into my room, she's like, what do you mean your hands are swollen? I was like, look, I don't know, like they're swollen. And they looked like sausages. Like, I will put in pictures, they looked like sausages. It just was not a cute look. Not only were my hands swollen, but my feet and my ankles were also swollen, so I like couldn't really walk either. And I think at this point my mom was more concerned because this had happened to a lesser extent 2 weeks before. So again, she's like, all right, well, you're not going to school, stay in bed, and I will call and make a doctor's appointment for you. So I had a doctor's appointment probably again like around 11:30, 12 for that day. So we go to the doctor's, but at this point I am still swollen by like 11:30, 12. So we now have proof that there wasn't a quiz or a test that I was trying to miss, right? And so my doctor was like, all right, well, obviously there's an issue because here you are again complaining of inflammatory issues for the second time in 2 weeks. And I was like, yes, yeah, here I am. And so she's like, all right, well, I don't know what it could be. And she's like, actually, didn't you go to camp for a month this summer, Maria? And I was like, yeah, I did. She was like, that was in New Jersey in the woods, right? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, you probably have Lyme disease. Like, that's probably what's going on. And I was like, oh, that's not fun, but okay. Because at that point I was fairly familiar with Lyme's disease because I had a few friends who had it. So I knew that they were sick for like a long time and then that they were just better. So I was like, all right, well, I might be sick for a long time, but I'll get better, you know? That was like what I was thinking. So I was like, all right, Lyme's disease, cake, I'll take it. Like, rock on, give me the meds. So she started me on antibiotics, and I just like went on my, and I got labs done. And she was like, all right, so you'll come back in a week, we'll go over the labs and we'll like move forward from there. And so I started on the antibiotics, and that was that. I remember later in the day too, we went to church. I don't remember why. I think my mom might have had to like pick up something, or she had a meeting or something, I don't know. But anyway, I was at church and I like crossed paths with this like one parishioner woman who somehow knew about my diagnosis already. Like, I don't know how she knew, but she knew. And she walks up to me and she just goes, I heard you got diagnosed today with Lyme's disease. And she goes, I'm so sorry, you know that's incurable. And I was like, well, that hadn't occurred to me, but thanks for letting me know. And the way that she said it to me, just so matter-of-factly that it was incurable, was just like a moment that I just will never forget, because it just really made me question what my future was going to look like, being told that I had something that was incurable, right? Because like up until that point, for those few hours in between, like, you know, my doctor telling me that perhaps I had Lyme's disease, and then this woman telling me that it's incurable, which like it is, that was a fact. I then had to question what my future was going to look like, because, I mean, who knows what your future looks like when you get diagnosed with an incurable illness, or, you know? So that was scary, but I was like, yeah, thank you. I'll be okay, thanks. She's like, yes, you'll be okay, you're strong. And I was like, yeah, I will be. Thanks. Love you too. And so then I remember I just like went on my way, and I was like, wow, this is real. Life is real. So then a few days go by, and my mom goes, oh, you can like stop taking that medicine. You don't have Lyme's disease. Like, your doctor called, we're gonna go over the labs tomorrow. And I was like, oh, okay, that's okay, weird, but okay. And so we went back to the doctor, and she went over my labs with me, and she was like, well, there's good news and there's bad news. And she was like, the good news is you don't have Lyme's disease. And I was like, rock on. Like, so I'm good, we're square, I'll see you next year for my physical, like, thanks, I don't know. And she was like, yeah, no. Like, she was like, your labs are irregular, was the exact word that she used. And I was like, well, irregular doesn't sound good. She's like, oh. And I was like, well, what is, she's like, I don't know what it is, but she was like, you don't have antibodies for Lyme's disease, so that's just off the table. And she was like, but everything else is just very much off. And she was like, so clearly it's like a rheumatological issue. And I was like, well, and she was like, well, that could mean a lot of things. And I was like, well, what are some options? And I don't remember if my mom or I said that, but like, we got to the part of the conversation where we were like, well, what do you speculate it could potentially be? You know, like the most vague sentence formatting one could create, right? So she was like, well, it could be Crohn's disease. And I was like, well, never heard of that. So in my 14-year-old mind, when she was throwing out these things that I'd never heard of before, I was like, well, it can't be that, because I don't feel like it's that, because I don't even know what that is. So no. So she was like, Crohn's disease, and I was like, oh, no, don't know her. And she was like, could be arthritis. And then I was like, well, no, you're forgetting I'm 14, so next. And then she was like, it could be cancer. And then I was like, whew, wow, I've heard of that one. And that is not something that I have. And that is exactly what I thought when she told me that, when I heard cancer used in conjunction with my name, I was like, it is not cancer. Like, I remember I thought that to myself in that exact moment, and it was like a respectful dissonance, you know? It was just very much being told one thing and feeling another, and knowing that whatever the latter is your truth, right? And so when she was telling me that perhaps I had cancer, I was just like, no, like, it's not bad. Like, it is just not that. So there was that, and that was super, super scary. But again, I found solace in just knowing that, and feeling rather, that I just didn't have cancer. But that still is really scary to hear. And I think too, just seeing my mom's face when she kind of threw that out there, it was harder than like me, observing my own personal dissonance with that statement. It was like seeing my mom's face was more affected me more than like the actual act of being told that I had cancer, perhaps. So anyway, she referred us to a rheumatologist after that, and she was like, well, I mean, this is above my pay grade, so I can't really help you guys much more. And I was like, okay. So then we made an appointment with the rheumatologist. I think at that point it was like a month out, because whenever you're seeing a specialist for the first time, you have to like get approved and then like pre-approved, and then they have to check your like insurance for like the 1700th time, and then you have to like give away your first child, and then you have to like sign in blood. I don't know, it just like the process is super long from my understanding. And so it took like a month to get an appointment with this rheumatologist. And so we went to a rheumatologist, and the appointment was like pretty straightforward in the beginning. They did an exam on me, and then they left to like review my labs and like synthesize, I guess, my exam and my labs. And they came back like 5 minutes later, and they were like, all right, we are gonna diagnose you with, drum roll please. Can you hear it? Yes, okay. We're gonna diagnose you with polyarticular juvenile rheumatoid. Can I get it in the right freaking order, okay? Polyarticular juvenile idiopathic rheumatoid arthritis. So that is like a $4 million word right there. Conjunction, sentence. That is a $4 million sentence right there, and I will unpack it for you. So polyarticular is just like the form of arthritis that I have, wherein it affects more than 5 of my joints. So that's the first part. Juvenile, meaning you get diagnosed with it before you turn 16. I got diagnosed when I was 14. Juvenile. Idiopathic, meaning of unknown origins. Rheumatoid, so it has to do with your immune system. Arthritis would be inflammation of your immune system, of your joints, sorry. So that's what all of those words mean, and basically it amounts to a very sick Maria for many years. So that was my first diagnosis, and that took around 3 months to get. And then right after they diagnosed me in the same appointment, they wanted to talk about treatment options, which I think is like fairly standard. But let me correct that statement and say treatment option. And they like kind of just very willfully came and like professed to my mother that there was only this one option, that we had to start yesterday, essentially. So that like was very unsettling for both me and my mom. And long story short, we did end up going back to that rheumatologist, because I think that really what happened was like they kind of were just very overbearing about the single option they were willing to kind of bring to the table. And it was, that was that. So we didn't go back, because that left a bad taste in both of our mouths. Not that I really had control over my like health situation at the time, which is like something that I'm so happy to talk about in a different video. But yeah, so anyway, that like experience didn't sit well with my mom. So we went and saw my homeopathic doctor after that, and she re-diagnosed me with JRA, and then she treated me for about a year, and then we stopped seeing her, and then I started seeing a new rheumatologist who again re-diagnosed me and has been treating me since then. So that was like around two and a half years-ish ago. So yeah, to sum it up, it took me 3 months to be diagnosed primarily, like for the first time, with JRA, and then after that I got diagnosed 2 subsequent times. So the process was super, super long and confusing and frustrating, and I don't know. I like to look on the bright side of things, and so being diagnosed with arthritis definitely has given me a lot of opportunities to figure out who I am and why I believe the things that I believe, you know, I think a lot earlier in life than a lot of people have the opportunity to, so I'm really thankful for my experience with JRA. But also too, it's like, that's not to say that it hasn't been challenging and it hasn't been hard and I haven't, you know, wished that I didn't have it at certain points. And by the same juncture, I would not wish JRA on my worst enemy, just because it's so unrelenting. Like, there was a straight 2 years where I just was sick and I didn't know what it was like to not be in pain. And I didn't know what it was like to not be the friend like jingling around with like medicine in her bag. And I didn't know what it was like to, you know, get a good night's rest. And I didn't know what it was like to, you know, wonder if I was going to be able to walk the next day. And I did, you know, like there was just so many things that I didn't know about my future. And I think that was the thing that was so crippling, and that kept me from enjoying a lot of time in high school, is because it was just hard to just exist and be in that state of like sickness and ill health all the time. But you know, I think too, again, like with the idea of opportunity and like personal development, is like, now that I know what it feels like to be sick, I'm so much more grateful to be healthy. And like that level of perspective has helped shape the way that I see the world and the way that I see a lot of my like blessing and privilege in life. So, you know, it's not all bad, but it's definitely is not all good either. So moving forward, I'm so happy to kind of just be open with my experience with JRA. I definitely want to make a video talking about like all the treatments that I've done and like where I am now in terms of my symptoms. And then also too, I wanted to do a video about just the way that it affects and affected me emotionally throughout the years. And then also too, I think it'd be fun to do a video with like a few or one of my friends, just hearing their perspective about what it's like to have like a friend with arthritis, and also to my perspective in that also. But thanks so much for listening, and I really hope that, you know, watching this video has just opened your eyes to the community that is the people who are challenged on the daily with juvenile arthritis, because I think the power of community speaks waves. And community wasn't anything that I found right off the bat when I was first diagnosed with JRA, because, you know, around that time, YouTube was my life. Like, I was very much, very, very involved with YouTube. I really loved watching YouTube videos, and I loved engaging with the YouTube community. I just like really enjoyed it. That was like a lot of my adolescence. And so naturally, when I'm confronted with this really big moment, you know, being diagnosed with JRA, the first place that I went for information or, you know, solace and understanding was YouTube. And there was seriously nothing, and there still is really nothing, talking about people and their experience with arthritis. So I really hope that this video has opened or started a little bit of a community of people who are experiencing JRA. Or, you know, if you don't have JRA yourself, I hope that you just learned something today, that, you know, you learn something new every day. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you around. Bye.